Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream. Welcome back. I'm really excited. We have a big one for you today. I've been working on this one probably since the beginning of the Way of Service because I've realized that everything ties back together. And if you've watched my elements video, it's my best performing video on my channel. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely go check it out after this live stream. But this live stream, if you stick around the entire time, we're going to go through all the connections and apply it to our relationships because that is, if you're going to follow the Way of Service, that is the key, is to be able to refine your relationships, deal with your relationships in the best ways. I've got a video coming out soon, and I've made the point before. Basically, our life is about relationships, and that's why we should follow the Way of Service. So I want to help you guys understand how to use the 5 elements in your relationships, but also how to use the 5 elements to take care of yourself, self-care. And that's what that original video is about, was using the 5 elements for self-care. That is the orientation of the original video. So we're going to take it a little bit further. We're going to make a bunch of connections, and I think it's going to be a great one. Let me know in the chat what you're thinking. All the time, I'm here for the live viewers. If you want to come in and join us live, you're watching the replay, join us live because I am here. I read all the chats. I want to know what you guys are thinking. And so, yeah. Please let me know what you're thinking in the chat. Don't be shy at all, okay? All right, good. We're live. We got the whole crowd here. This is amazing. We got Matthew, Praise Christ Yoga, Eleanor, Susan, and Yale. Amazing. Welcome, guys. I'm so glad to have you join me. And I'm not sure if you guys have all seen the Elements video, but I hope you have because it will help with this. So, as I mentioned, the original video is about self-care, and I was looking for some good quotes on self-care from some of the ancient masters, and Buddha has some incredibly powerful quotes on self-care. Let's read these quotes. Buddha says, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." So when we think about being godly, we always think about helping other people. But we are one of those people. How do you treat yourself versus how do you treat others? It should be equal. And I feel like often we treat ourselves way worse than we treat others, even strangers, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself. And that person is not to be found anywhere. I'll let that sink in. There is no one more deserving of your love and affection than yourself. And if you understand the concept, if you've been told when you're flying in the safety instruction, they tell you when the oxygen mask comes down, you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then you can take care of your loved ones, even your children. Because if you are not functioning completely and if you are not functioning well, you're not going to be able to help. And if you're trying to function on a really high level, help people on a really high level, you need to be functioning on a very high level. And that requires taking care of yourself. All right, so, oh, Ryan's here too. My goodness, everybody's here. Amazing. So good to see you. All right, I'm going to get to the chat in a few minutes, but I want to get through my introduction first. All right, so if you watch the original video, the 5 elements, okay, most people are familiar with the first 4 elements. There's fire, earth, air, and water, right? Not necessarily in that order. Now, the 5th element is debated in a bunch of different philosophies. There's the ancient Chinese, they call it metal. They actually have wood instead of... forget what it is. Maybe it's earth? I don't know. I can't remember right now, but the Chinese 5th element is metal, okay? In Ayurveda, the 5th element is ether or prana or space even. And then in ancient Greek, it is ether. So there's ether, space, and metal. But as I famously said in that original 5 elements video, I don't think any of those are correct. None of them are correct. I actually want to play you my reveal from that video. So I'm going to play you a clip from my original video because I want you to know what is the fifth element, okay? The fifth element is not spirit, it's not ether, it's not space, it's not metal. It's something else. You see, there's one. All right, here we go. One thing that contains, because I think that they are not quite complete. You see, there is one thing that contains spirit and creates time and space.
Did you find the fifth spirit? You are the fifth spirit.
Yes, the fifth element is you. Specifically, it's your consciousness. And so, the source of the fifth element, spirit, is your consciousness.
You are the one you've been waiting for.
You can see how this definition... All right. Back to me live, because me presenting 3 months ago is so much worse than today. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Basically, the fifth element is you. And I'm going to use the word spirit because it's easier than constantly trying to explain this. But spirit is you, which is consciousness. So you are spirit and you are the fifth element. And you are the source of the fifth element. And the fifth element also connects all the other elements together and is a part of all of the elements. Spirit imbues earth, air, fire, and wind. But spirit also exists separate from those things because spirit exists apart from the material world. So that sets it apart. And so this dynamic of the 5 elements is what we're going to talk about, okay? And here's a good depiction of them. Ether, spirit, chi, atman. There's a lot of words that can be used. We'll use spirit today. Here it says ether. So we had talked about the zodiac signs. We're going to come back to this chart. We had talked about this in a previous live stream if you were watching. Each one of the zodiacs is connected to one of the 4 earthly elements, and they all have their own natures. You can also see the elements in the I Ching. Each of the trigrams, there's 8 trigrams, but you can divide them in half and group them in groups of 2. So earth and mountain go together, right? Water and lake go together. Wind and thunder go together. And finally, fire and heaven go together. So, and when you read the I Ching, if you read the primary hexagrams for fire, for example, it will give you an understanding of the elements. And we'll get into that a bit later. We also talked about the chakra system last week. And you may recall that the chakra system is related to the elements as well. Because we start at the bottom, we have earth, which is the most yin, the most connected to the earth, and the most dissimilar from the divine energy of ether, right at the top. And then next is water, which is a little bit more refined than earth. So you have water. And then above that, you have fire, which is kind of like the transformative element in the middle, where the yin elements combine with the yang elements to create this magical thing called fire. And then above fire is air, which, as you might understand, is getting as close to spirit as we can get. And then finally, the last ones are spirit. Now here it has ether, light, and thought, which I thought was actually really interesting. It's like ether being energy, or energy in the physical world, and then light being even more refined, and then the final refinement being thought or consciousness, as I had mentioned. All right, how are you guys doing? I think we've reached a good point to talk about chat. I want to read all the chats, so let's go back here. Everybody said hi, and then Eleanor said, I don't know what element I am because water and air are both so confusing to me, but I'm definitely not earth. That one seems very obvious. That's interesting. So why is water and air confusing to you? And hopefully this presentation, so I'm going to be tying a lot of different ideas together, and you'll see how they all go into the elements. And one way to understand the elements is how they relate to the chakras, and then how the chakras relate to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're going to talk about that, but I'll talk about it really quickly. Your earth chakra, right, the root chakra, which is connected to earth, is your physical well-being, your ability to feed yourself. You're safe, like physically, you're going to be okay. So survival, right? Basically, I think that's yeah. All right. And then the second one, water, is connected. Here it says safety, but I think it's also, each one of these charts is a little different, so I kind of have to work with a bunch of them. Deals with pleasure. And one thing connected to pleasure is emotion. Another way to understand this is the development of your consciousness. Basically, everyone starts at level 1. They are aware that they exist, or they learn that they exist and that they need to survive. Then, once they've accomplished that, they can move up to the next level, which is having feelings about different things in their world. So that is the water element, as you can see in this chart, right? Water is the second chakra, and water is connected to emotion, right? It can be turbulent, it can flow, it can crash, it can be violent, but and all the water signs in the zodiac are related to emotion. So water and emotion go together. Then once you understand that things have emotional impact on you in the world, then you can start to decide what to do in the world. And that's the third chakra, level 3, willpower. And in this chart, that is connected to fire. So it's like giving you direction or having energy in a particular direction. That's fire, okay? And then I believe that also connects to the heart chakra, which is our love, our care for others. Care is like, a passion, something that we really care about, it we're passionate about. That's a burning fire. So willpower and love, those are both of the fire element. And then the air element, we go up into truth and also, I believe, insight. So, what is communicated? What is going on in the world at large? Bigger ideas. So, and we'll get more into air as far as its traits, because I feel like this doesn't tell you as much as some of the insights into how air works. So I hope that was helpful, Eleanor. Praise Christ Yoga says, I am fire. All right, well, that's very clear. Susan says, fire on the edge of water. Leo, cusp Cancer, moon rising. Fire and water, that's a tough combination, right? They're kind of opposites. Matthew says, I am earth. Praise Christ Yoga is fire for sure. Interesting. Yale says, hi. And Matthew A says, we are told to love others as ourselves. So if we don't love ourselves very well, then we also can't love others very well. Thank you, Matthew. Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying in the introduction. Eleanor says, it seems way easier to love others than yourself. That passage always confused me. Eleanor says, I took your question to mean what element are you most likely, and not what element are you from your horoscope. Yeah, I didn't mean it as far as your horoscope. I think, everybody is really a combination of all the elements. And one of the goals of this presentation is to show you how you're going to need all the elements in your life if you want to live well, and if you want to have good relationships, if you want to have good friendships and, love relationships and relationships with your children. Basically, you have to harness all the elements. So being but we all have our talents and our preferences and our styles, right? So we're going to use one of the elements the most probably in our life. And I feel like that is often related to our zodiac sign, but there are plenty of people out there who don't fit that mold, right? So don't feel like, just because you are a particular zodiac sign, that's definitely your element. That's not necessarily true. Yeah, what as in your personality, right? And then there's some areas in your life where you might use one element or another. Like I feel like I'm very much a water and earth element, or water in particular. But I also love to talk and I love to communicate, and so that's me using the air element. Like this, that's what this podcast is all about, right? It's on the airwaves, right? That's another beautiful thing. Our language incorporates the use of these elements. So my voice is going into the airwaves. That's kind of the first time I've really thought about it, especially when you're live. That's pretty cool. All right, let's continue on the presentation. We've reached the end of chat for now. Keep chatting, guys. I love your comments. I feel like it takes me, I have a ton of material to go through, and I have the way I think that it should be presented. But if you have particular questions, I'm totally fine with jumping around. I think it's more helpful, and it's going to allow me to connect things better for you. So, yeah. All right, so let's get back to the presentation. So I want to tell you guys really quick, I feel like this is the biggest value of my elements video. And, I was a novice back then, and I didn't cut things, and I didn't think about how maybe I'll make this video in the future, but basically this 10-minute practice is the core of that video, and I can explain it really fast. And this is how you utilize all 5 elements in less than 10 minutes every day. I find that if you do these things, you've really gotten yourself off on the right foot, and it takes only 10 minutes. And they're all things that you should be doing every day, as you'll see. So the first one is the earth, okay? Ground by contacting the earth with your skin. In the video, I go into all the details about why grounding is important. There's scientific studies that show how grounding is, as an instantaneous process, will immediately reduce the inflammation in your body, okay? And I don't want to go through all the information from that video. There's a ton of information packed in there. So if you're interested in the details, go watch that video next time you get a chance. But basically, grounding is super important, and it involves touching your bare skin to the earth, okay? Number 2 is water. Drink a pure 8-ounce glass of water. Every day you should be drinking water. I'm going to drink some water. If you have some water, drink some now. We'll all do it together. Oh, yeah. I definitely needed that. Drink water, and there are people out there who don't drink any water. I don't know how you do it. To me, there's nothing better than a perfectly filtered, chilled glass of water. I don't know if there's anything better than that, honestly. If somebody said I could only drink one thing ever again in my life, that would be it. Number 3 is fire, okay? So that means getting sunlight in your eyes. So far we've talked about the sources of these elements. These are all the things that are available to us every day, right? It would be crazy for us not to tap into all 5 of these elements that are being broadcast and put into our life every day. The earth is there for you to ground. Water is there for you to drink, okay? The sun is there to gather strength and energy from. It is scientifically proven that getting light in our eyes, especially at sunrise and sunset. So if you can get up at sunrise and watch the sunrise, and if you can take the time in the afternoon to watch the sunset, that is scientifically established to reset your circadian rhythm, allow you to sleep better, rest better, all these things. So there's so many good things about it, and it doesn't take long, and it's super pleasurable. That's another thing. Grounding, I love doing it. Like, you can feel it. If you haven't done it in a long time, I guarantee you the next time you do it, you're going to feel immediately how pleasurable it is to ground. And also, to drink water when you're thirsty, obviously, is fantastic. Looking at the sunrise and sunset. And even if you can't do that, you should get outside and get sunlight in your eyes. You don't have to look directly at the sun. You can look, towards the sun a little bit. It shouldn't hurt, right? It should still be pleasurable. Even at high noon, you can, accomplish this step. Deep breathing, air breathing, right? So breathing through your nose, taking a deep breath. Let's all do it together right now, okay? Relax and breathe deeply through your nose for 4 counts in and 4 counts out, okay? Do it one more cycle. So, I don't know about you, but I feel fantastic. I mean, so you can do that anytime, right? Air is always available. And then the final element, spirit, meditation, I suggest with music. But I just realized in this moment, an insight, each of these is perhaps more and more available, but air and spirit are always available. Air is available when you're breathing, and then spirit is available even when you're not breathing. So that's an incredible thing to recognize. But most people go through their lives and never even think about spirit, never focus on it. They never meditate. They never go inward and explore the soul. If you haven't done that, you got to do it. All right, let's check out chat. Sorry, I gotta figure out where I'm at here. Okay, Matthew A says, further study of that passage means we are to love ourselves as he loves us, so with a godly love. Then love others with the same godly love. Yes, Matthew, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that is the ultimate goal of the way of service, okay? The idea is that if we orient ourselves towards service towards others, it's going to help us do all the things in our life. But in order to do that, we also must learn to serve ourselves. And so ultimately, we're going to be serving ourselves, serving others, which comes through love, ultimately. And then the perfect, most divine expression of that is God's love, right? Eleanor says, totally, Matthew, thanks. I'm not sure what you're talking about, but if you're talking about what Matthew just said, I agree. Yale says, I know people who live only off of Diet Coke. I don't see how. Well, and food, obviously. Okay. Oh, yeah. You, as in, that's all they drink, right? Yeah, exactly. Yale also loves your quote, Matthew. I agree. Yeah, I mean, and we're going to talk about that. Getting into the fire element. You know, how do you fuel your body? What kind of materials are you bringing into your body to fuel your fire that you live your life with, right? Your fire is at the core of your being. As I said here, fire is like the unification of the higher elements. Above it is air and ether, and below it is water and earth. And then fire is like where the rubber meets the road. Like the fire within, it only goes out once we die, right? It's like the spark of life, right? That's another perfect phrase in our language that talks about the element within what we're talking about. The spark of life, right? We all have the spark of life. How are you feeding your inner furnace? Are you feeding with Diet Coke? Because, bro, come on, man. You know, drink some water. All right. So we went through the basic practices. As I went through in that video, like I said, you can get far more detail on like the scientific and the spiritual roots of this information or these practices. Also in the video, I go through the advanced practices, and I want to go through them quickly here. So for Earth, walking in nature, okay, you know, you can go and ground, but also taking time out to walk, especially in nature, so that you can appreciate nature and really just focus on how awesome it is to be on Earth, right? That's the element, and that's what you're appreciating when you walk in nature and you see all the magic that is around us, and that is part of being grounded. So to be grounded, you want to be here on Earth now, excited that you are on Earth, right? We're going to get into some of the other things, and I noticed that we've already been live for 25 minutes and I'm barely through my presentation, but so I have a ton of information about this. Maybe we'll have to continue to cover it in another live stream if I can't get through all of it. But I think also I'm going to come back to these ideas over and over. I'll probably just make more videos on these topics. You know, there's a lot to cover. So as I'm saying, walking in nature and part of life is being grounded, really appreciating that you're on the earth, okay? Also, eating properly. So, you know, how do we bring the element of earth into our bodies? It's through eating food. And what food you choose to eat is basically your decision of what type of earth you're going to incorporate into your body. If you're drinking Diet Coke or you're eating things that have a lot of toxicity in them, you're bringing all this dirty earth into your body, and it's going to be hard for your body to get rid of it. I think I missed something back here. I wanted to mention this one. You know, you with water, you drink the water and also wash your hands and face, right? And that takes 1 minute. Just splashing water on your face and getting and cleaning your hands. I don't know about you, but I notice the difference, especially when you wash your face, because I feel like most people don't do that nearly as often as they wash their hands. But if you just take a moment to splash water on your face, it will change everything. I actually play tennis every week, and at the set break, people usually take a bathroom break, and I will splash water on myself and like put water on my hands. And when I come out, I feel like I'm a totally different person. So if I was playing poorly, I'm just totally reset. And this is related to the element of water, its ability to cleanse us, and the idea of being reborn. Because when we are born through water, right? I don't know if you understand or think about that, but we are born in water. And a child can be born underwater and stay there apart from the mother for a period of time, because they exist in water and they are born through water. So when we are born, we are reborn through water. All right, so I just wanted to go back to that one thing, and we covered Earth's advanced exercises, and there are even more exercises, but these are just the ones that I covered in the video. These exact details are from the video, so those are the details. Eleanor says, also on grounding, touching the soil with your hands. That seems very grounding. Literally appreciating the soil by feeling it and looking at it, and even smelling it. Yale says ritual hand washing is very common in Judaism. It's interesting. I didn't know that. Yes, exactly, Eleanor. You know, I've thought about this because I actually made a short, because you can ground with your hands. If you don't want to take off your shoes, like say you're wearing shoes and socks and like laced up boots or whatever, you know, it's annoying to take off your shoes to try to ground. You can ground with your hands, right? You can just you could ground with your knees. But it is interesting because there are energy meridians that flow from the hands and the feet. We talked about the energy body before. So probably the very best way to ground is to get your hands and feet on the earth. And as you're saying, maybe to dig through the earth, right? I know that a lot of people who garden get to do that. Another thing I didn't mention about grounding, the very best way to ground is to actually swim in a natural body of water, because water is very conducting and it will envelop your body. So you can imagine your entire body is being grounded simultaneously. All right, so the advanced exercises for water, bathing, right? So we kind of talked about this already, but washing your hands and face are great. But if you can, you know, take a shower, that will be even more transformative. I know that, like I mentioned in the video, you know, if my wife and I are having a fight, one of us will take a shower and we'll just like totally feel differently. Might continue fighting, but that's because we're holding on to that negative energy. But physically, you will feel very differently. The advanced practice for fire is working out and doing moving meditations, which are kind of the same thing. But, you know, vigorous physical exercise. And I know a lot of people, including myself sometimes, go for a long period of time without doing vigorous physical exercise. That is how you stoke up your inner fire, right? Air. So for the air element, I was very excited about this idea of clearing the air. So air is about communication, and it's a lot about our relationships. So the idea is, if you think about this word or this phrase, clearing the air, it's another beautiful phrase that incorporates the elements and shows us how they interact in our lives. Clearing the air means to make something apparent, is to clear away falsehoods. It's to really tell someone what you're thinking, right? interestingly, if we have things that are unsaid, we can kind of feel it in the air, right? It's like the air is heavy about us when we don't say what we need to say. So clearing the air is saying what you need to say. And once you clear the air, you can be free like the element of air. That is the primary purpose of the element of air. And then for spirit, serving the world, communing with other spirits, and hugging them. So when we hug, we're combining our spirits. As we talked about our spirit body, like our spirit is actually our energy body outside of our physical body. So we can interact with others, but also just being of service to others, we connect to our spirits together, right? And that is the purpose of spirit. That is God's plan for us, I believe. That's why I created the way of service. His plan for us is for us to be of service in the world. And so if you want to align yourself with spirit, you need to start thinking about how can I serve the people that I am available to right now. I heard a great quote. It's like, when you wake up in the morning, ask the question, who needs me today? So in the video, I also go through the different principles of the elements. All right. So earth, the principles are stability, groundedness, reliability, and steadfast principles. So if you think about that, groundedness, as we talked about before, which is really being connected to the earth. It's also being realistic about what you need to do and what the physical world demands of you. Also in relationships, are you reliable? And related is having steadfast principles. So principles are like natural law, right? Like the principle that fear is a liar, okay? Fear is what is not true, and love is true. That's a principle, and it's built into the fabric of our existence. And so you can relate it to earth. It's like the natural laws, like the law of gravity, that is of the earth. The natural laws, they are stationary and they are steadfast and they don't change. So if you can live your life in alignment with those, you are harnessing the element of earth. Water, as we talked about before, water is emotions. It is, and again, to relate water to emotions, you think about like the tides and the way that the ocean will change from day to day. One day it'll be smooth surface. The next day it'll be an incredibly turbulent and dangerous, thing. So that is the same way as emotions. They have this wide range, and so you can see how water is very connected to emotion. Water is also flexible. The idea of if you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup, right? I have a great Bruce Lee quote in that video, and I put it in the water short as well. I have a short for each one of these as well, if you want to go watch those. Humility. Water will flow to the lowest place. This is a quote from Lao Tzu. Water is content with the low places that people disdain. Thus, it can nourish all things, right? So humility is directly connected to water. And then as we talked about purification, water purifies. Water cleans. It is the universal solvent. Without water, you can't clean something, right? It is the primary ingredient. And if you don't have soap, water does a pretty good job. Fire. So as we said before, fire is like where things come together. So it's balance. And also, interestingly, it's also dependence. This is an idea that I learned from the I Ching, because the I Ching hexagram of fire over fire, or pure fire, is called the clinging. As in, fire clings to the fuel that it is burning off of. It is dependent on the fuel. So while in some ways you might think of fire as being very powerful and impressive by itself, it is always dependent on the fuel and the conditions, right? It needs enough water that it doesn't burn up all the fuel right away, but it also needs not too much water, or there won't be any fire. It needs the right amount of air. If too much air will blow out the fire. Just enough air will keep the fire going. No air and the fire cannot burn, right? Also passion and care, and then energy and love. For air, it's freedom, communication, and then wide influence. Another idea that I got from the I Ching. The wind over wind is gentle influence. So, like, wind will steadily blow and change everything in the world, but it is imperceptible what wind does, right? And wind also spreads the seeds upon the earth. That was an insight also from the I Ching. Wind is basically, it has an influence on everything, and we don't really think about it because it's invisible, but it has like the widest influence. And then spirit is about synchronicity, intuition, peace, relationships, and service. So I wanted to show you again how the chakra system lines up with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The earth and the first chakra is your physiological like safety. And then they have this word safety. I wish they had put like the word feeling, because I feel like that's really better here. Like your feeling or your emotions about, and you can see it's your gut feeling. What does your gut say about the situation, right? That is right here. Your water is also connected to intuition, which is interesting. There's like a symmetry here as well. Like our intuition is often talked about coming from the third eye chakra, but it also comes from our gut, right? And then our love and belonging is connected to our place in the world. Like, what is our profession? How do we make money in the world? What is our identity? That's related to the third chakra. Our esteem, what do people think of us? How do we connect to others? That's the heart chakra. And you can see the heart chakra is right where our arms are. Our arms allow us to hug others and to give to others and to serve others, which is where our heart connects to other people. And also you can see that in the lowest chakra is connected to our legs, which is basically where on earth are we going to be? Where, our legs are related to our physical presence more than anything else. Where our feet go, our mind and spirit follow. And then finally, self-actualization, the highest levels, right? Intuition, knowledge, highest knowledge, our ability to communicate clearly, especially out into the world, and finally, our connection to God. So I want to start to turn the conversation a bit towards the relationships. That was the promise of this video. And, we've talked about self-care, but I want to get more into how these elements relate to relationships, and how we can use the principles of the elements to be better in our relationships, to solve the problems in our relationships, and to notice the imbalances or imbalances, because there are negative aspects to each of these elements as well, and we'll get into that. So the primary roles of each of the elements, in my opinion, earth is about reliability, right? So we can always rely on the earth. The earth is always there to support us. Like even now, you can feel the earth, your gravity is pushing you down, but the earth is supporting you and holding you up. We can always rely on the earth. Water is about sensitivity, right? Do we have sensitivity in the world? A person who's harnessing water is sensitive to their emotions and to other people's emotions. Fire is about transformation, as we've mentioned several times. It's like this magical thing that combines all the other elements and transforms them. Air is about freedom, right? Freedom to speak your mind. That's why freedom of speech is a great thing, and they are directly related. And then finally, spirit is about transcendence and understanding that we are not entirely made up of this physical world. So this is just another look at the chakras with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So a little bit more details on each level, right? So the lowest level being, food, water, shelter. Next level being employment, property, family, and social stability. The next level being friendship and intimacy and a sense of connection. And then confidence and respect of others at the level of esteem. And finally, spontaneity, meaning, and inner potential, experiencing purpose. All right, yes. So like I said, we're going to talk more about elements and relationships. All right, how are you guys doing in the chat? I don't see any more chats right now, so I'm assuming you're doing okay, but let me know what you think. Sorry, I shouldn't be playing with this on stream. All right, let's keep going. All right, so I want to get into the details of what each of these elements really tell us about and how we live them in our lives. So the following slides are really taking the positive and negative aspects of the elements and putting them into our lives. So let's look at the earth element first, as we've talked about. That's kind of the first element. Reliability, stability, groundedness. So as we've talked about, and now let's talk about being that, right? Are you a reliable person? Okay, this is a big question that always comes up. And it's kind of like, it's like an order of importance, right? So if you're going to have a relationship with someone, you have to at the bare minimum, be reliable. If you're not reliable, that person is not going to rely on you. And they're not going to rely on you for friendship. They're not going to rely on you for love. You're not going to play a major role in their life. So being reliable is one of the first things here. And I feel like the opposite of this is flakiness. And that's actually, I don't know if I think I changed the slide, but I put flakiness under the air element. If you think about like the word flaky, like I imagine like something getting just blown away, right? Like something very light and airy that just floats away. But the people who are flaky, you make plans with them and you can't rely on those plans. You think that they're going to do something and you can't do it. So basically what you end up having to do is not rely on this person and not have this person be a major person in your life. All right. So boundaries and structure, that's another major aspect of the earth element. Do you have boundaries in your life? If you don't have, and it's interesting how you think of boundaries as like a wall, literally a wall with the things in your life that you don't want or can't handle, right? Like you build a wall to keep things out or to keep things in. And there's certain things that you shouldn't share with other people, and there's certain things that you shouldn't allow from other people. And that's part of being healthy. It's related to trust and safety. It's kind of the same idea. Support and nurturing, as I mentioned, the earth supports us and the earth nourishes. One of the things that I took from the I Ching, the Mother Earth does not judge. It supports both good and bad people, right? Just like the sun shines on all people, good or bad, right? It doesn't judge from that. And so that's something to embody, treating people well, whether or not we believe they're a good person or not. That is one of the highest spiritual ideals. As I mentioned before, steadfast principles, we talked about that. Practicality and realism, right? Again, do you recognize how important, the earth is, a physical reality is? If you're a very spiritual person, you might think, oh, I'll just pray and let God take care of it. But you have your physical duties that you need to take care of as well. And financial stability is related to earth. And if you're familiar with tarot at all, there's the pentacles, which are coins, and that is the earth element. So that's interesting. Another synchronicity. So imbalances from the earth element can lead to rigidity and stubbornness, right? So the earth element, and I know some earth elements that are very stubborn, right? So a stubbornness, like an inability to change, right? All of these things have the light and the dark side, right? So if you're reliable and you have strong boundaries, if you push that too far, if you're not flexible, you will be stubborn and rigid, and that is the opposite of the air element, right? And the opposite of like spirit, which is completely flexible and infinitely flexible. So that can lead to indifference and emotional coldness. Also, it can lead a person to be sluggish and resistant to change. Again, as we move up the scale, and it's from the yin to the yang, a pure yin person, a person who's so yin, they're not going to have that fire, that energy, that lightness that they need in order to operate in the world. Materialism and hoarding, man, this is a big one. Materialism is literally the worship of the earth. You're worshiping something that comes from the earth and will return to the earth. From dust it came, and to dust it will return. So if you are focused on material gain, you will ultimately be left, wanting for happiness and purpose and truth, because we cannot find happiness through materialism, because it is simply just earth. It is the same as dirt, basically. I mean, the only difference between gold and dirt is that, we can use it to buy things, but ultimately they are of the earth. They are both the same kind of thing, and eventually gold will be destroyed just like the dirt of the earth. Susan says, different way of looking at the elements. I'm not sure what you mean. I would like you to share more about that thought. What is the different way you're thinking of? This is an interesting one. Blood from a stone. So you've probably heard this idea, and it's the idea that someone has an inability to yield, like basically looking for compassion from someone who is so rigid that it's like trying to get blood from a stone. If you've heard that phrase, that's what it means. And it's interesting because, like, obviously a stone is directly related to the element of earth. And it's also related to overthinking and worry, which is related to being inert. So, analysis paralysis that leads to not taking action in the world, being stuck. You could see how, if you're stuck in the mud, right? You're stuck in the earth. So that's the earth element. All right, for the water element, as we talked about, water is about sensitivity and empathy. So empathy being your ability to feel other people's emotions, also your sensitivity to your own emotions. Humility and receptivity, we talked about that. Water flows through low places. It also fills up the spaces that it reaches. It is flexible and adaptable, right? So when we are flexible and adaptable, we are embodying the principle or the element of water. When you're going with the flow, right? You're going with the flow. That is, you're in a social situation. Maybe you want one thing or another. Your boundaries or your rigid structure, your earth element says you want this. But if you allow yourself to just go with the flow, now you're being like water. Emotional intelligence, that's like your empathy. Purification and renewal. Again, drink water to clean out your body. Do a water fast. Bathe in a natural body of water, and also obviously at home. Water will purify you. You will feel it. You will feel renewed. You will be back to, feeling like a newborn, as we said, being reborn. Intuition and subconscious wisdom. Yeah, again, the water element is related to intuition. You can see it here. Water signs are intuitive. Again, it's interesting how it's kind of a mirror of the higher place, right? So you would think at this lower chakra level, you're not into intuition, which comes from spirit, but we're at the gut. And at the gut level, you have an intuitive center. All right. Imbalances for the water element. So turbulence and emotional flooding. So, and the word abyssal there might be just confusing for you, but the I Ching reading for water over water is the abysmal or the abyssal. And it's the idea of like a deep chasm of water that's dangerous. So that is what can happen when somebody is too much into their emotions. There's like an infinite void, a deep, deep void that you can drown in emotions. Like if you really hold on to, especially negative emotions like sadness or despair, there is like a deep, deep hole that you can go into. That's why it's called the abyssal. It's like an abyss, a deep, chasm that will swallow anything up. And people who are very emotional can end up stuck in their emotions in this deep chasm. Also being wishy-washy, right? Again, here's a thing, a phrase that comes from our language that shows water, right? Wishy-washy. Water that flows this way and then flows back and just is all over the place, and you can't really rely on it. Again, it's kind of like being flaky, but it's also, not being reliable in the moment with people. People don't know where you stand. It's like you're flowing around, but you're flowing around in a dysfunctional way, because when you're wishy-washy, again, you can't be relied on to, where do you stand? People don't know where you stand. Drowning in emotions, exactly. That's connected to the abyssal, as we said. Having poor boundaries, right? Leaking energy. The word leaking, again, it's related to the word, the element of water. So if we have poor boundaries, like the element of water does, and we just flow and mix with everything, we will deplete our energy. We'll leak our energy out, and we won't have a sense of identity, and we won't be able to stay true to the principles that we believe in, right? Passive-aggressive behavior, right? It's like you're trying to accomplish something, but you're accomplishing it in an indirect way. That is like water. And holding emotional grudges. Yale says, I feel like people get addicted to holding on to feeling bad. Exactly, Yale. One of my favorite spiritual teachers, Bashar, he actually talks about this, and he says there is a period of time, I don't remember what he gave it, but it was a period of time less than 20 seconds where it's natural to feel an emotion, let's say 14 seconds. It's natural to feel angry or sad or frightened or whatever the emotion is for that short period of time. But after that 14-second period, it is now your choice to continue to hold on to that emotion, because naturally that emotion will abate and be replaced by the next emotion. That's almost the gift of our life. If we are tuned into the present moment, we are never holding on to any emotions. And also trying to hold on to positive emotions doesn't work either, right? There was some tennis professional who said the thrill of victory lasts for 10 minutes. You win a championship and you feel great for 10 minutes, and then you go back to feeling the way you felt before. It doesn't change anything. This is why seeking external rewards is never satisfying. Ultimately, we have to develop our internal world and get our rewards from our internal state, which we choose. We choose whether or not we're grateful, right? Gratitude is how you choose to be joyful and happy with what's happening, and that's an internal state that's generated. Eleanor says, can you give an example of how balancing these qualities would play out in a relationship? Say you're in an argument with someone or dealing with a long-term dysfunction. How would you use this? understanding in the moment to help your relationship. Yeah, I mean that's a tough question. I do have some notes on that. Let's see if I can pull them up. I'll pull them up in a minute, but I'll tell you one story I wanted to share. I was playing tennis and I wasn't winning, right? But I wanted to win, but I also didn't want to care about winning so much. And I actually thought about the element of fire and the element of earth. And when I thought about fire, I was like, I want to be passionate about this game and like I want to win. So that's like caring about winning. But I didn't want to I didn't want to have so much fire that I was going to get angry and I was going to get unbalanced and care so much that if I lost, it was going to be this awful thing, right? So I literally, while I was playing tennis, I was thinking about how to balance the element of fire in the situation, which was related to basically how much I cared about winning and about the game. Because I don't think not caring at all makes sense, right? You're there to play the game. You're there to compete. The other people want you to care about the game. So that doesn't make sense. And also caring to an extreme level doesn't make sense either. So, that there's an example that I found in my life I thought I would share on this stream. Let me see if I can pull up this. Just give me 1 minute to find these notes. So I did develop this, and I didn't have a chance to put it into the... Oh, here it is. I didn't have a chance to put these notes into the presentation, so I thought maybe I'd get to them later. But let's see, here are some notes for applying them directly in our relationships, right? So for Earth, setting healthy boundaries, providing reliable support. These are the things that we're talking about, but these are just extra ways of looking at it. So I guess in the moment might be tough, right? I guess in the moment you can suggest that you take a deep breath. Right? If you're like in a heated argument, for example, you can suggest that you guys take a deep breath. You can suggest that you go outside and ground yourselves, or take a walk together, right? But if you're trying to apply it like while you're in an argument, that's a little bit difficult. It might be better to apply it in an analytical way to the things that are going on in your life and see how you might be being too rigid or not having enough boundaries, right? That's the element of earth. And also, I feel like, the reason that this topic, the elements, excites me so much, it's almost an intuitive thing. Like feeling the elements in your life allows you to start to recognize their influences and how they are part of you. Maybe the discussion of elements isn't helpful for you, but for me in particular, it's something I've always been fascinated by. The colorfulness of it. The fact that we can see these things in our life. We can see earth, we can see fire, we can see water. We can't see air, but you can feel air. Air is there. You can feel it when you're breathing. To me, it's a reminder of how everything is in synchronicity, right? Everything can be understood and works in fractals, right? So our relationships are a fractal of our bodies, which are a fractal of the elements. If you're following me, Eleanor, I hope that's helpful. And I hope that, again, like clearing the air, right? There are little tidbits and tips and tricks that we can start to pull out of each of the elements. So the clearing the air is, if you're in an argument or you're having a difficult time, clearing the air is particularly useful if you're not talking to someone. If you haven't talked to someone in a long time, but you'd like to, or that there's something that you should have said, clear the air. And all of a sudden, your relationship is renewed. And it has new life. You've breathed new life into this relationship by clearing the air, right? Susan says, thinking of the different energies in fire, water, earth, and air, and how each interact with our bodies and each element itself, they flow together. Yes, Susan, I'm glad you understand it. Yeah, that's how I feel. It's amazing to see how like earth and water, they work together and they're close, but they're not the same. And then, fire is basically a combination of earth, water, and air, and maybe even spirit. All right, so we were on the water element. I think we discussed all that. So let's get to the fire element. Positive qualities, care and attention. So to me, the most primary important thing about the fire element is caring and passion, right? Passion and enthusiasm there. Do you care about your life? If you don't have enough fire element, you're not going to be excited. You're not going to be taking great action and moving with great purpose and vigor. That is the purpose of fire. And that's related to the question of care. Do you care about your life? Do you care about your relationships? When you show someone that you care by being passionate about the relationship or being passionate about them, that's showing the fire that burns inside of you, right? Initiative and motivation, right? Like I just said. Also, transformation and change. So if you want to change something in your life, you have a lot of inertia. If you have too much of the earth element in this particular area in your life, give it some fire, right? Apply some fire and some passion and some change to it. You have to make that decision to light that fire and to put that fire and to fuel that fire on that thing. Creativity and inspiration, right? Again, combining all of the elements in a particular way, it gives you inspiration, gives you creativity. Warmth and connection, right? Warmth is, again, we can be warm with someone by giving them a hug, which comes from the heart chakra into the arms and is the element of fire, right? Also, leadership and charisma. When we burn brightly, people see that light and they follow it, right? Someone who is very passionate that's the kind of leader people want to follow. Someone who has all of the qualities, right? Someone who's passionate but is also reliable, is also sensitive to their followers, right? And as we'll see, we'll get into the other elements. A leader who allows people to be free, right? That's the element of air. And also a leader who shows their connection to God. Now, imbalances in the fire element, again, like my tennis story I was just discussing, it's like if you have too much fire, you're going to get angry and you're going to be irritable, right? Also, burning out, that phrase, right? Another phrase that we have, or a word in our language directly related to the element of fire. If you have too much fire, if you have too much passion, and you just keep applying that fire to that thing without taking a break, moving away from it, getting into the other elements on that topic, go for a swim, you're going to burn out, and burning out, right? You take that fire that was super powerful that you burned for so long, and now it's out. That you have burned it out, right? It's like, it's ironic, right? That fire, when brought to its greatest height, will disappear faster. It's only by burning steadily and in a sustainable way that we don't burn out, right? Impulsivity and rashness, right? Like, a spark flying and burning something that it shouldn't burn, kind of like an uncontrollableness is a dangerous uncontrollableness. Like air is uncontrollable, but it's not destructive. Fire, when it's uncontrolled, is very destructive, obviously. And then, as you can see, dominance and control issues. Someone who is very fiery and angry, impulsive and rash, they're going to be dominant, but, not in a good way. They're going to scare the people around them, just like fire that's out of control. And they're going to want to put that fire out or run away. Most people just run, right? All right. How we doing? We got 20 minutes left. I don't think we're going to get through everything, but we will at least get through the elements descriptions here. All right, anxiety and restlessness. Again, are you a focused flame, or are you an out of control flame? Are you restless? Is your focus going all over the place? That's anxiety, right? The quote of if you're focused in the future, the quote is, if you're worried about the past, if you're depressed, you're worried about the past. If you're anxious, you're worried about the future. If you're at peace, you're in the present moment, right? So whenever I see that word anxiety now, I think of that quote. The best way to avoid anxiety is just don't think about the future, because the future will take care of itself if you take care of the present. And finally, scattered energy and lack of follow through. So scattered energy is related to burning out again. All right, so now the air elements. Positive qualities are communication and expression. So the air element is in the throat chakra, which is where our voice comes from, and that's communication. That's one of the primary methods of the air element, and that's why it's related to the clearing the air idea. Openness and transparency. Again, transparency, are you clear? A clear day is when the air is clear. Clarity and understanding, same idea. So connection and networking. Again, the idea that the air on the planet connects to everything, all the air on the planet, more than anything else, right? The water connects, but sometimes it's not connected. But all of the air on the planet is connected. It's almost like one uniform. It's not uniform, but it is one cohesive and continuous. That's the word I'm looking for. Air is continuous on the planet Earth. And so, again, it influences each other, right? Air that over here influences air over here. And that is, I talked about this in the video, the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is a perfect example of this. If you're not familiar with that, it's the idea that a butterfly flapping its wings on one side of the planet sets off a chain reaction that creates like a tornado on the other side of the planet. Just because of the dynamic of the way that the air is moving. Because as I said before, the air everywhere influences air everywhere. So what this tells us is that our words and actions have a wide influence and are carried through the air all around the planet. Whew, I'm getting hot in here, guys. I don't know if you can tell, but I am super hot right now. All right, we got 15 minutes left, and I want to get through these slides before we wrap up. Okay, intellectual insight, right? That's what it was related to. I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in the spirit slide. Freedom and spaciousness. Again, the air element is about freedom. Clearing the air is about making people free to make their choices. If you haven't cleared the air, it's because you haven't told something that somebody needs to know. And so you're not giving them the freedom to act the way that they want to act. Also, you're not giving yourself the freedom to be free from other people's expectations. If you clearly communicate where you stand, other people can't hold things against you. Like, I told you where I stand, that's it. I am free to tell you where I stand and not be obligated to do what you tell me to do or what you think I should be doing. And I talk more about this in the video also. So imbalances, long-windedness. This is something that I've run into a lot in our life, and I'm sure you have as well. There are so many people who they just talk and talk and talk about themselves, and they don't ever get around to closing their mouth and listening. This is an imbalance of air where they're sending the air out, but they're not allowing the air in, right? It is so important to connect with people by listening and not by talking, right? I don't remember. There's so many quotes about this, but there's a quote about how the percentages, and it's like spend 80% of your time listening and 20% speaking. When you do all the talking, you're going to lose people's attention, you're going to lose their interest, and they're not going to feel like they're connecting with you. They're not going to feel like you're important to them. So long-windedness is a big problem in our world, I think. Also, people get so excited when they find somebody who's listening to them that they forget to then repay the favor. You know, those of us who are good listeners, we need you to listen to us as well. I don't know if if I've made that point enough. All right, I'm going to skip over some of these because I feel like we've already talked about a lot of them. Flightiness and unreliability. Again, that's what we're talking about with flakiness, right? Excessive intellectualization. That's related to the long-windedness, right? So if you're trying to fit everything into the concepts and into words, right? Words are in the domain of air. If you're trying to fit everything into those things, you're over-intellectualizing. You're kind of being long-winded in your own head, if that makes sense. And then that comes out when you talk to other people, and they can be put off by you trying to fit their reality into the set of words that you have for them, right? You're like, oh, well, that fits into this concept, or that fits into this dynamic. Just like I said, like these elements are super interesting, but you can't explain everything through the element system. Nothing can be explained through any one system. Life transcends all of our concepts, including the 5-element system. So we cannot over-intellectualize, and that is related to the air element, like I've mentioned. All right, let's do the spirit element. So the positive qualities of the spirit element: understanding beyond intellect, right? This is our intuition and our knowing, our almost like, like I said before, the gut feel, but also our intuition. Where is our third eye leading us? Divine connection and purpose. I mean, we talk about that so much on this channel. I had a couple live streams talking about how connection to God and being one with God, that is basically what all religions and all spiritual traditions talk about. So that is the element of spirit. Spirit is like the refinement of all the other elements. And spirit also creates the other elements, because I believe that, if God is spirit, which is God is consciousness, right? Like I said earlier, we're using spirit as a replacement word for consciousness, and for really like the I amness, like existence itself. That is what the divine is. I'm not going to be able to explain that in one bullet point. That's for sure. All right, just taking a look at chat. All right, we got 10 minutes left. All right, what is this? Okay, let's get through these and then we'll look at the rest of the slides. Higher perspective and synchronicity awareness, right? Again, these are all related to having a spiritual perspective, understanding that we are spirit, understanding how the universe works, orchestrated by spirit. That will allow you to recognize synchronicities and signs in your life. Wisdom and guidance, right? There's like a knowing sometimes in your life, a knowing that you're supposed to do this next thing, or you're not supposed to do this next thing. That's spirit guiding you. Orientation towards service, that's what the way of service is all about. And transcendent awareness. So those are all kind of saying the same thing. And it's interesting, as we get to this higher element, it's harder and harder to really explain it, right? As we get further up into the realms, and I wanted to show you guys, because we talked about the energy body last week. I think I put this in here. Oh yeah. So these are the chakras, and they go all the way up into even more refined and harder to understand levels. So right now we're talking about the third eye. Then there's the crown, and then you go above the atmosphere. I don't know if you can see that. Above the atmosphere, then you go up into the sun and into the galaxy. So basically, the further up people start to talk about, the harder it is to understand what we're really talking about. That's just my point here. So we'll come back to this slide a little later. Oh, I definitely want to get to those slides. Okay, I got to get through this. All right. So imbalances come from, the biggest one, and I thought here it is, head in the clouds. That is, I think, the biggest imbalance with the spirit element is not being grounded. It's being disconnected from the world, having your head in the clouds, not being realistic. That's where the negative qualities of being too, basically not focused. How do I want to put this? The negative aspects of spirit, right? The negative aspects of, focusing on spirit are to be like this, is to have your head in the clouds, be disconnected from physical reality. Also, like bypassing our lives through our spiritual practices. And finally, having a dogmatism, a strict, rigid belief that we hold on so strongly that's spiritual in nature, but actually disconnects us from the people in our lives. All right, we've got 8 minutes left, and I definitely want to get through these slides. So these are kind of ideas that I wanted to share with you. These, hopefully, again, Eleanor, these might be helpful for you, talking about, what are the practical things we can do. So with the earth element, recognizing that you are always supported. So that's like you can feel the earth underneath you anytime. The earth is always nourishing us. So if you go and ground yourself, it will instantly heal you. And then the power of principles. The earth creates these principles that, if we can recognize them, can create natural boundaries for us and allow us to live our lives in a structured and correct way. With the water element, it's about, so the first two, rebirth, and then if you've heard I forget if it's a psalm, but God leads me to still waters. The idea that no matter who you are, being next to a still water of even a pond or of a river or a lake, it is joyful. And that's actually the I Ching, lake over lake, is the joyous. So it's the idea that being next to a lake on a beautiful day is a joyous thing. And that gives us a rebirth. It's because of that element of water. Also maintaining humility and acceptance, being able to flow, go with the flow, flowing around and through things that happen in our lives. And also recognizing the danger of the deep abyss of emotions that we can fall into. For the fire element, stoke your fire, feed your fire, in order to apply passion and care and energy to the things in your life. That's the lost principle of care. Find your passion, find your purpose. That's what my last video was about, and it's basically what everything in the way of service is about, is serving the world, but you serve the world in the joyful way that makes you excited by serving yourself, by finding your passion and living through your passion. And also giving your body and your soul and your mind the right fuel, right? Feed your body, feed your mind, and feed your spirit the right fuel. The air element reminds us breathing is easy. I mean, breathing is the way to immediately calm yourself and to bring you into a positive state. It's always available, just like the earth is always supporting us, but our breath is always available to breathe deeply and make us recognize that we are safe and that we can just be in the present moment. Clearing the air, we talked plenty about that. Also, clearing the air allows you to be free. Having good communication allows you to be free. That's a big one for me. I believe, and this is something that I apply in my relationships, is like I just tell people where I'm at. I clear the air all the time. I'm very clear with my communication. Clear communication, right? Another perfect phrase that shows that we're talking about air. That allows you to be free, right? You've communicated yourself, and now you can do as you said. You are free to act the way that you've explained yourself. Recognize your influence on the world, right? Air is continuous throughout the planet, so everything we do does have an influence across the planet, no matter whether we believe it or not. And finally, be impeccable with your word. So the last element is spirit. Remembering that we're always connected. As I mentioned earlier in the live stream, we are, the breath is always available, but even more so, spirit is always available. Spirit is available even when you're not breathing. So we are always connected to God, and we are always connected to each other through spirit, probably even more profoundly than through air, where air is just like a physical example of spirit. Spirit is where we are truly connected and where we truly have influence with each other. Also, you can draw intuition and inspiration. If you start a meditation practice, this will start happening to you. And I'd love to hear your stories about it, probably on another live stream. So spirit is also about exploring the inner world. If you want to tap into spirit, you need to do meditation. You need to explore inward and not just outward. And finally, if you want to gain the attention of angels, you must be of service. This is a powerful one. I believe it's true, and maybe you don't believe in it, but I do. There are spirit guides, there are angels, there are higher beings that are interested in what we're doing on this planet, but only when we're being of service. So that is how you connect to those powerful spirits. And once they see that you are committed to being of service, they will give you their power. They will help you be more intuitive, and you will understand things, and things will come to you that you want and that you need to continue on that path. All right, folks. We made it through my prepared slides, and we've got 2 minutes left, but I did start a little late, so if I can go a little bit, I want to just hang out for a minute and kind of catch our breath. I'm going to read the chat. Eleanor says, yes, your summary kind of ideas are very practical. Thanks. Okay, good to hear. Thank you. Susan says, most people, I got to say, hit the like button. I always forget to tell people, hit like, please. If you've made it this far, you got to like the stream. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. All right. Susan says, most people won't listen to your view until they have said their view. Which element? Yeah, I think that's long-windedness, and that's also a lack of sensitivity. It's a lack of water. It's like interacting with them as a drying experience. It dries you up. There's no water there. There's no nourishment when someone will only talk about themselves. Yale says, that is a comforting thought to always be connected through spirit. Well, that is the truth, my friend. From everything I have studied, you are always connected to spirit. The only time you're not, you are always connected to spirit. The only time you're not aware of it is when you are kind of denying it. You're denying it, and so that's when you feel like you're not connected to spirit, but you really are. There's no choice. We are all spirit and permanently connected to God. Yale says, totally true, Susan. That is just people being self-absorbed. Yes. And I know we've all dealt with that, and unfortunately there's a lot of people that kind of act that way. All right. Make sure you hit that like button. Let's see, what else? Is there anything else worth talking about here? We got the I Ching. We've got this thing about the tarot. I mentioned this earlier, right? The pentacles. So these are the coins, and they are the physical, right? So money is of earth, right? If you haven't studied this is just a really quick explanation. Wands are fire, right? So fire is energy, water is emotions, air is logic, earth is the physical material world, right? These things all go together. I thought this was a really interesting table. I feel like this might help you to understand the elements as well. There's just so many ways to describe the elements, and it's really interesting how it works totally with the chakra system, and it works with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's just so many ways to approach this. I'm sure we're going to talk more about it in other live streams. I'll do more videos about it. I'd love to hear all your questions. If you want to put them in the chat now, I'll answer any questions you have about the elements. put them in the comments below. I respond to every comment put on my channel. So let's see. Yale says we've all dealt with it and also probably done it at some point. Yes, that's a good point, Yale. I used to do that a lot. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, I'm pretty good at talking. So I've done that many times in my life, and I realized, probably a few years ago, how I needed to fix that in myself because it bothered me so much when other people did it. It's like, if it bothers me when other people do it, I better not be doing it, you know? That's in my next video coming out next week. I swear it's coming out next week. I've been working on it for 5 weeks now, incredibly. Judgment of others is a judgment of yourself. Whatever you judge in others, it is something that you either have done in the past or are still doing now. So, what is the quote from the Bible? Remove the log from your own eye before you try to remove the speck from someone else's eye. All right, so I've got a lot more material, but I think that's all we can cover today. I think we've got 5 viewers, though, so one more person didn't hear me say hit the like button. Hit the like button, please. I'll give you guys 30 seconds to tell me if you want to put more chats in. Otherwise, we're going to close out the stream. Eleanor says, totally, Yale. Was about to say that. We all do that sometimes. Exactly. And, if you do that, if you're so excited about sharing something, that's fantastic. That's passion, right? But just every minute or so, I should look this up. Like, what is the perfect amount of time, or what is the maximum amount of time you can talk to somebody without asking for a response before they're going to check out and start to get annoyed? And it's probably different for everyone, right? And with a close friend, you might be able to talk for a few minutes without saying anything, but ask them a question. Some people do this just like as a reflex, like, you know what I mean? But like, really mean that. If you're going to say, do you know what I mean? Mean it, and then wait for an answer, right? A question and then silence. That is very, very powerful. A question and then silence. Let the person think about it and give you an answer and show them that you care about their answer, right? Yale says, great stream. Thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. I'm never sure that it's a great stream. I'm kind of like in the mode, and I'm not sure how it's being received all the time. So it's great to hear that you feel that you enjoyed it. Yale says you need to pay attention to the signs the person gives when they listen. Exactly. What is it? 80% of communication is nonverbal. It's like, listen to their intonation, watch their body language. Are they facing you entirely? Is their entire body pointed at you? If someone's body is pointed away from you, watch where their toes are pointed. If their toes are pointed away from you, they're not interested. They're not invested in the conversation. Eleanor says, I've noticed that it happens often when someone just needs a feeling of being listened to. And sometimes it's that they, or myself, are so excited about what you're saying that they agree, that they keep talking. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Yeah, again, it's like, it could come from a couple places. It's like just needing to share yourself and not having, because I feel like a lot of people are missing good listeners in their life. I consider myself a good listener. That's why I'm a life coach. So people really seek that out, and having just someone listen. And life coaching is about listening and also sharing real helpful ideas. But people are happy with just people who listen. Like there's the classic joke about the therapist. You go to see a therapist, and everything you say to them, they just say, and how does that make you feel? And they really just never offer any advice. They just literally just listen. And it works for some people, or at least it's better than their daily life where they don't have anyone to tell the ideas to. It's also like when you're able to say things, when you're able to talk to someone, you're able to get things out. Speaking words has like a magical power almost that's beyond just thinking about it, right? Eleanor says, what you said about asking about question and just listening sounds like the invisible duct tape over your mouth. I've tried it and it totally works. I've never heard of invisible duct tape over the mouth, but that sounds like a solution if you got this problem. For sure. All right. Asking a question, then listening. Right. All right. I think that's everything, ladies and gentlemen. Look forward to my video next week. Like I said, I'm live every Friday from 2:30 to 4. So if you are just catching the end of this one, you can join us next week, Friday at 2:30. And this is the Way of Service. Check out my website, wayofservice.com. Like and subscribe. And I love you. Have a great weekend, a great Easter weekend. And we will talk to you next week.